Hey guys, one of the most frustrating things that can happen is if you're at home and you spend hours dialing in this tone and getting it perfect, and you get to the gig and it doesn't sound anything like what you worked on at home. We got 4 tips that are going to help you get that tone dialed in that'll help it translate well from your bedroom or your studio to the stage. Okay, but first, if you're sort of figuring you don't really know how to dial in a tone, like how do I make a tone happen? How do I match this tone? How do I find this thing? We got a video right here that is going to help you figure that out. So once you figure out how to actually dial in a tone, this video is going to help you get that tone from the bedroom to the stage and sound just the same as it does. So those 4 tips right there, I'm going to say, have a target, use a looper, dial it in hot, and dial it in fast. Let's dive in. First thing is to have a target. I want to make sure that I know what I'm aiming for. And the thing about that is I want to hear a reference. So if I've got a recording of something that I think sounds good, then that's something I'm going to go back and forth with. Okay, maybe I've got a recording of myself at a show when I had that tone dialed in, man, it was nailing, it was killing. Maybe I've got a recording of a guitar player that I like his tone. Maybe I've got a recording of another violinist. I really like her tone. I'm going to try to match these tones. The reason I want to have a target tone is that your ears are really easy to fool. They self-calibrate over time, and that reference is going to help us get away from, if I've been listening to a dull tone for an hour, my ears are going to start to think that that's normal. And I'm going to start hearing things that aren't there. And then if I go from that dull tone I've been listening to a good tone, I'm going to be like, whoa, that's really bright. So you want to make sure that you're aiming for a fixed target, because your ears are going to start, whatever they've been hearing for a while, they're going to start to think is normal. So we don't want that to happen. The next thing I want to say is use a looper. And generally, as a violinist, we're going to put our looper at the end of our signal change so that we've got all our effects going into that. And whatever effects I had while I was playing, when I kick the looper, they're going to be there. For dialing in your tone, I'm going to do this the other way. I'm going to have my instrument going straight into a looper, and then the looper going out to all my other effects, and then to my amp. The reason for that is your ears are easy to fool. Your brain has really strong filters, and they filter out stuff that it doesn't think is important. So the example I give, take your phone and narrate, use your voice app or whatever to narrate a trip to the mailbox. Walking down the stairs, walking down the driveway, I got my mail, I'm coming back inside, boom. All right? Listen back to that, and you're going to hear a lot of stuff that you didn't hear when you're walking out to the mailbox. Birds, dogs, cars going by, and it's because your brain filtered all that out. It didn't think it was important. It does the same thing when you're playing. So if you're playing and then trying to dial in a tone and playing, trying to dial in a tone, your brain is so focused on playing this beastly instrument that we've chosen that it will filter out a lot of sounds. So if you play into your looper, and if you're trying to dial in a distortion patch, play the kind of stuff that you would play with a distortion patch and let it run for 2 minutes. But as long as you can, believe me, you're going to be listening to this several times. You don't want to get tired of hearing yourself play. So play the kind of stuff that you would play through a distortion patch and then roll that looper, and then you can dial in the thing. Not only is it faster, because it's not play, dial, it's disengaging all those filters that your brain is using while you're playing, and you can actually hear what your audience is going to hear, and that's a good thing. The next thing I'm going to say, dial it in hot. It's got to be loud. When you're dialing this thing in loud, you need to dial it in at pretty much the same volume that you're going to be performing at. And if you have a dB meter, you can get them on your phone or whatever. Make sure you're 90 to 100 dB as you're dialing this stuff in. Why is that? Well, if you can look at this curve, the Fletcher-Munson curve, this may be a little confusing to you. I'm not going to dive too deep into this in a short video, but suffice it to say that your hearing response, the way you hear frequencies is a function of volume. So the louder the sound is, the differently I hear each of those frequencies. So when I listen to something at a low frequency, I got my radio turned down and then I turn my radio up. It doesn't just sound louder, it sounds different. Well, we want to make sure that we're using that while we're dialing in our tones. If you're trying to dial it in and be respectful to your neighbors and everything, I get it. I have neighbors. But you're not going to get the tone that you need. Also, headphones. Headphones are not the same as loudspeakers. You're trying to dial the stiffening on your headphones. There are a certain number of things you can do with headphones, but the hearing response from a sealed can around your ears is different from the response in a room where air is moving. So headphones are useful for some things. If you're trying to nail down that sound that's going to translate well to stage, headphones ain't it. So again, your ears are not a flat response. Your amplifier, you should be dialing this thing in with the amplifier that you're going to be using on stage. If you can borrow, if you're using speakers on stage, see if you can borrow one from the band or whatever, and dial in your sound at home. Your ears, what they hear is a function of volume. Your amp, as you turn it up, it's not just exactly louder, it's a little different. Amplifiers are not linear, they change with volume. And speakers are the same way. When you crank these things up, they're not just going to be louder, they're also going to be different. So you've got to take that into account when you're dialing in your sound. Dial it in fast. One of the reasons is if you spend too long doing this, the cops are coming. Because like I said, you're going to be dialing this in loud. So make sure you're not doing this at 2 in the morning if your neighbor has a baby and a gun. Life tips. Okay. So the reason we want to dial it in faster is a couple reasons. A, to be a good neighbor. The other one is from a safety standpoint. You're trying to protect your ears. You can't be working for hours and hours at a time at 100 dB. That's not good. You don't want to destroy your hearing. The other thing, again, your ears are easy to fool. They will start getting used to the things that they're hearing, and it happens faster if it's louder. Fatigue is a real thing. If you've been listening to a thing at 100 dB for 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes, your ears are going to get tired and they're going to stop hearing things. And then I want to go back to reference your target. You want to keep going back as you're dialing in your tone. You're like, okay, I think I got that EQ just right. Go back and listen to your target at volume. And you go, oh man, yeah, that target is a lot warmer and thicker than the sound I'm getting. Well, then I've got to come back and maybe see if I can dial the EQ or whatever to get that right. So keep going back to your target. Every couple minutes, if you make a fairly major adjustment on your pedal board, go back to your target. Am I getting further from my target? Am I getting closer to it? Again, your ears are easy to fool. If you don't keep going back to your reference, you're going to be chasing ghosts. Also understand, don't be hard on yourself. This is a process, not an event. It's gonna take multiple iterations. You got to understand that your solo sound, if you're a solo artist and you're the only person that's going to be going through the PA, you dial it in however you want. If it sounds good to you, it's good. The other thing you got to understand, if you're in a band, you got to think about what the other instrumentation in your band is. If you got a guitar player, they tend to take up space on the lower end of the spectrum. If your sound is real bottom heavy, you might be in the guitar player's way and you're creating conflict in the mix. So you may have to mix your sound a little skinnier than you would. So once you get to the gig and you've got that preliminary sound that you think is right, you're going to have to remember to work with your engineer and your bandmates to say, okay, this sounds good by itself. How can we make it sound good in a mix? All right. So those are the tips I've got for you. You find a reference. You want to make sure that you're dialing it in hot, dial it in fast, use the equipment that you're going to be using on stage, and I think this is going to help you get a sound that translates better and quicker from your home studio to your stage. All right, thank you guys for hanging out.